Between 2014 and 2018, the average American household paid $62,000 in federal taxes, while their net worth grew by roughly $65,000. Their tax burden essentially consumed their entire financial progression. During that exact same window, Warren Buffett expanded his net worth by $24.3 billion. He paid just $23.7 million in federal income tax, a true tax rate of 0.1%, 10 cents for every $100 of new wealth. You were taught the ultra-wealthy deploy offshore accountants to hide fortunes in illegal shell companies. They do not. The mechanism is terrifyingly simple, entirely legal, and hiding in plain sight within the tax code. It relies on a single financial weapon that destroys the working class but builds empires for the ruling class. By the time the screen fades to black, your relationship with your own bank account will be permanently altered. The geometry of taxation. The modern economic system operates on a fundamental lie. It is a lie drilled into you from the moment you sit in your first classroom, reinforced by every university, and cemented by every corporate human resources department. The lie is that income is the measure of wealth. You are taught to chase the highest salary possible. You trade your time, your physical energy, and your psychological bandwidth for a direct deposit that hits your account every 14 days. You view this transaction as the ultimate victory. The ruling class views this transaction as a catastrophic financial failure. To understand why, you have to look at the geometry of the United States tax code. The Internal Revenue Service does not view all money equally. It categorizes capital into different buckets, and it heavily penalizes motion while actively rewarding stillness. Earned income, the money you make from a W-2 job, is the most violently taxed capital on earth. Before you even see your paycheck, the government extracts federal income tax, state income tax, Medicare, and Social Security. By the time a high-earning professional touches their money, nearly 40% of it has vanished. But wealth is not income. Wealth is the accumulation of assets that appreciate in value without requiring daily labor, and the tax code treats asset growth with immense reverence. If you buy a piece of real estate for $1 million, and 10 years later it is worth $5 million, you have generated $4 million in wealth. How much tax do you owe on that $4 million? Zero. You have not sold the asset. The gain is what the IRS calls unrealized. It is phantom wealth, invisible to the tax collector, yet fully recognized by the banking system. This asymmetry is not a glitch. It is the foundational architecture of elite wealth accumulation. But recognizing the asymmetry is only the first step. The true power lies in weaponizing it. YouTube has demonetized this channel. They despise this specific conversation because it threatens the advertisers who rely on your financial compliance. I refuse to sanitize the truth. Instead, I'm doubling down. But I cannot fight this algorithm alone. Click the link in the description and join me on Patreon. That is where the raw, unfiltered, in-depth finance videos live, the ones they explicitly forbid me from publishing here. We are building an asylum for the financially awake. Get inside. The 1920 precedent. To grasp how deep this structural advantage goes, we have to look backward. The rules you're playing by were not written in the modern era. They were forged over a century ago in a courtroom battle that permanently severed the working class from the owning class. In the early 20th century, the federal government was still trying to figure out how the newly ratified 16th Amendment, which established the federal income tax, actually worked. In 1916, a woman named Myrtle Macomber owned 2,200 shares of Standard Oil of California. The company decided to issue a 50% stock dividend, meaning Myrtle received 1,100 additional shares simply for being an existing shareholder. The IRS, hungry for revenue, sent Myrtle a tax bill. They argued that these new shares were income and therefore subject to taxation. Myrtle refused to pay. She argued that she had not received any cash. She merely held a larger number of shares representing the exact same proportionate ownership in the company. The money was still locked inside the asset. The battle escalated all the way to the Supreme Court. In 1920, the court handed down a 5-4 decision in Eisner versus Macomber. The justices ruled in favor of Myrtle. They declared that the government cannot tax wealth that has not been separated from the asset. Capital growth is not income until it is converted into cash through a sale. That single ruling birthed the modern billionaire. It established a legal shield around appreciating assets. As long as you do not sell, the government cannot touch you. But this creates a glaring, immediate problem. If your wealth is entirely locked inside stock portfolios, apartment complexes, and business equity, and you refuse to sell because selling triggers a massive capital gains tax, how do you actually live? How do you buy the groceries, fund the private jets, and acquire more assets? You cannot pay for a mega yacht with shares of Amazon. You need liquid cash. The solution to this problem is the most closely guarded secret in modern finance: the ProPublica reckoning. For decades, the mechanics of elite liquidity were theoretical. We knew the wealthy avoided taxes, but the precise mathematics were shielded by privacy laws. That changed violently in June 2021, when the investigative journalism group ProPublica obtained a vast, unprecedented cache of IRS records. The leak exposed the financial interiors of the wealthiest humans alive. The data was staggering. It revealed that from 2014 to 2018, the 25 richest Americans saw their collective wealth rise by $401 billion. Over those exact same 5 years, they paid a combined total of $13.6 billion in federal income taxes, a true tax rate of 3.4%. Let those numbers sink into your psychology. A neurosurgeon making $600,000 a year gives nearly half of their life energy to the state. The individuals controlling the global economy give pennies. Look at Jeff Bezos. In 2007, he was already a multi-billionaire, steering one of the most dominant retail monopolies in human history. Yet his IRS filings showed that he paid zero federal income tax that year, not a reduced rate. Zero. He repeated this exact feat in 2011. His tax return reported that his investment losses exceeded his income. The richest man on the planet actually claimed and received a $4,000 child tax credit meant for struggling families. Look at Elon Musk. Between 2014 and 2018, his wealth grew by nearly $14 billion. He paid $1.52 billion in taxes, a 3.27% true tax rate. Michael Bloomberg paid 1.3%. The public reaction to this leak was predictable. Outrage, demands for wealth taxes, accusations of systemic corruption. But emotional outrage is the lowest form of intellectual processing. The elite do not care if you are angry. They only care if you understand the machinery. The ProPublica files did not expose a crime. They exposed a highly optimized strategy known in institutional banking circles by 3 syllables: buy, borrow, die. The buy phase, acquiring the battery. The strategy begins with the acquisition of assets, but not just any assets. You are looking for specific vehicles that act as financial batteries, storing kinetic economic energy while shielding it from the elements. The Federal Reserve's Survey of Consumer Finances continually tracks where American wealth is actually stored. The data points to a brutal reality. The bottom 50% of the population holds nearly all of their net worth in consumer goods, cars, furniture, and checking accounts that are actively decaying due to inflation. They buy things that lose value the moment the transaction clears. The top 1% operate in an entirely different universe. They hold the overwhelming majority of corporate equities, commercial real estate, and private business interests. They buy assets that possess intrinsic gravity. These assets produce cash flow, but more importantly, they appreciate in baseline value over time. When you buy an index fund, a multifamily property, or build a company, you are creating a fortress of unrealized gains. Every year that the asset goes up in value, you are getting richer on paper. And because of the 1920 Supreme Court ruling, that growth is invisible to the IRS. But an asset is useless if it simply sits there. The wealth must be extracted. The conventional advice tells you to sell the asset, take the profit, pay the 20% capital gains tax, and enjoy the rest. The wealthy never sell. Selling is a surrender. Selling is admitting defeat to the tax code. Instead of liquidating the asset, they collateralize it. The borrow phase, the physics of leverage. This is the hinge upon which the entire system turns. This is the exact moment the geometry of wealth diverges from the geometry of the working class. If you walk into a bank and ask for a personal loan, the underwriter looks at your W-2 income. They check your credit score. They assign you an unsecured personal loan at an interest rate of 12, 15, or even 20%. For the middle class, debt is a suffocating chain. It is a penalty paid for consuming beyond your means. But if you walk into the private wealth management division of JP Morgan or Goldman Sachs with $10 million in a brokerage account, the rules of physics change. The bank will offer you a securities-backed line of credit or an SBLOC. They will allow you to borrow up to 50 or 60% of your portfolio's value. You do not have to sell a single share. The bank simply places a lien against your stocks and hands you a checking account loaded with millions of dollars in liquid cash. The interest rate on this loan? Historically, it floats just above the secured overnight financing rate, SOFR. Even in a high-rate environment, the wealthy are borrowing at remarkably low single-digit percentages. Now, look at the mathematics of this maneuver. Let us assume your portfolio grows at an average historical rate of 8% per year. You borrow money against it at an interest rate of 4%. Your asset is out-earning your debt by a massive margin. The portfolio pays for the cost of the loan simply by existing. But the true magic lies in the tax code. When a bank wires $5 million into your account as loan proceeds, how much tax do you owe on that $5 million? Nothing. Debt is not income. Debt is a liability. The IRS cannot tax borrowed money. You have successfully extracted millions of dollars of purchasing power from your assets without triggering a single taxable event. You can use this tax-free cash to buy a house, fund a lifestyle, or, more deviously, buy more assets, which then serve as collateral for even more tax-free debt. This is how Jeff Bezos can have zero taxable income while expanding a global empire. His wealth is locked in Amazon stock. He simply borrows against it to fund his life. The debt is a rounding error compared to the underlying growth of the asset. You are watching this and assuming this is a billionaire's game. You think you need a space company or a global e-commerce monopoly to execute this mathematics. That is the exact psychological trap designed to keep you paralyzed. The exact same architecture is being used right now in your city by people making less money than you. Dual track, the earner versus the owner. To make this visceral, let us strip away the billionaires and run a simulation over a 20-year timeline. We are going to track two individuals. They both generate identical economic value, but they funnel it through completely different architectures. Meet the earner. He is a highly specialized orthopedic surgeon. He makes $500,000 a year in W-2 salary. Society views him as the pinnacle of success, but the earner is trapped in the highest tax brackets imaginable. Federal taxes, state taxes, and payroll taxes immediately slice away $200,000. He takes home $300,000. He pays his mortgage, funds his children's education, and saves what he can. Every single time he wants more money, he must physically step into an operating room and trade his time. If his hands stop working, his revenue drops to zero instantly. Over 20 years, the earner will pay over $4 million to the federal government. He is bleeding out. Now meet the owner. She bought a small portfolio of commercial warehouses early in her career. Her properties are worth $5 million. She structures her leases so the tenants pay the taxes, insurance, and maintenance. Her W-2 income is deliberately minimal, just enough to cover basic health insurance. In year one, her real estate portfolio appreciates by 10%, creating $500,000 in new equity, the exact same amount the surgeon made in the operating room. But the owner pays zero taxes on this growth. It is unrealized. She wants to fund her lifestyle, so she goes to her regional bank and requests a cash-out refinance on one of her warehouses. The bank appraises the property, confirms the new higher value, and writes her a check for $200,000 tax-free. The debt is secured by the building. The rental income from the tenants easily covers the new, slightly higher mortgage payment. She takes the $200,000 of tax-free debt and lives perfectly. The surgeon had to earn $350,000 raw just to take home $200,000 after taxes. The owner generated the exact same purchasing power without losing a single dollar to the IRS, without stepping into a hospital, and without permanently liquidating her assets. Over 20 years, the owner repeats this process. Her properties double in value, then triple. She continuously borrows against the rising equity. The debt grows, but the asset value grows significantly faster. Inflation acts as a hidden tailwind for her while acting as a crushing headwind for the surgeon. The macro engine, shorting fiat currency. This brings us to a terrifying macroeconomic reality that very few people fully internalize. Debt is not just a tool for tax avoidance. Debt, when attached to an appreciating asset, is a weaponized short position against fiat currency. Billionaire investor Ray Dalio extensively documented the mechanics of long-term debt cycles. When you observe the Federal Reserve's behavior over decades, a distinct pattern emerges. To sustain the economy and manage national deficits, the central bank must continuously expand the money supply. They print dollars. As more dollars flood the system, the purchasing power of each individual dollar drops. This is inflation. It is a mathematical certainty designed to slowly erode the value of the national debt. But the wealthy use this exact macroeconomic force to their advantage. When you take out a fixed-rate loan, whether it is a 30-year mortgage on an apartment building or an institutional line of credit, you're borrowing dollars at today's purchasing power. You get to buy hard assets right now. Over the next 2 decades, the government will print trillions more dollars. Inflation will run hot. The asset you bought will skyrocket in nominal price because it takes more weakened dollars to buy the same building. But the debt you owe the bank, it remains fixed. You're paying the bank back with tomorrow's diluted weak dollars. The debt is melting away in real terms, actively destroyed by the very inflation that is making your asset look more valuable. The middle class holds cash in savings accounts, watching inflation vaporize their purchasing power. The wealthy hold hard assets and fixed-rate debt, forcing inflation to vaporize their liabilities instead. It is an inverted reality. The system is designed to punish savers and reward leveraged owners, but every loan must eventually be accounted for. The debt cannot float in the ether forever. Eventually, the bill comes due. If you spend your entire life borrowing against your assets, piling up millions in tax-free debt, what happens at the end of the line? Do your children inherit a catastrophic financial nightmare? Do they have to sell everything to pay off the banks, triggering a massive delayed tax bomb? No. The architecture provides one final devastating loophole. It is the ultimate erasure. The die phase, the erasure. You have bought the assets. You have borrowed against them for decades, living a life of absolute financial sovereignty without paying a fraction of what the working class pays in taxes. The debt has compounded. The unrealized gains are staggering. And then you die. In a system built on logic, this is the moment the IRS would step in. They would look at the massive chasm between what you originally paid for your assets and what they are worth today, and they would demand their pound of flesh. They would tax the gains before passing the remainder to your heirs. But the U.S. tax code is not built on logic. It is built on lobbying, preservation of capital, and intergenerational wealth transfer. When you die, your assets pass to your heirs under a provision known as Section 1014 of the Internal Revenue Code. This provision activates a mechanism called the step-up in basis. Let us trace the math. Imagine you bought a block of stock for $1 million when you were young. At the time of your death, that stock is worth $100 million. You have $99 million of unrealized, untaxed capital gains. If you sold it the day before you died, you would owe roughly $20 million in capital gains tax. The moment your heart stops beating, the IRS intervenes, but not to tax it, to erase the history of the asset. Under the step-up in basis, the tax value of the stock is instantly reset to its current market value on the day of your death. Your children do not inherit the stock at your original $1 million basis. They inherit it at the new, stepped-up $100 million basis. The $99 million of profit, it vanishes from the IRS ledgers. It is completely, legally wiped from existence. The tax liability is buried with you. Your heirs can take ownership of that $100 million portfolio on a Tuesday and sell the entire thing on a Wednesday for $100 million. How much tax do they owe? Zero. Because in the eyes of the government, they acquired it for $100 million and sold it for $100 million. There's no gain. But what about the massive loans you took out from the bank? The loans you used to fund your life for decades? The heirs take a small fraction of the newly stepped-up tax-free assets, sell them with zero tax penalty, and use the cash to pay off the bank loans. The debt is cleared. The remaining tens of millions of dollars are kept entirely free and clear, ready to be deployed into the next generation's buy, borrow, die cycle. The bank gets their money back with interest. The heirs inherit an empire completely cleansed of its tax liability. The only entity that loses is the state, and by extension, the working-class taxpayers, who must continually fund the infrastructure the wealthy rely upon. This is the ultimate engine of dynasty. It is why old money never truly dissipates, unless the heirs are completely incompetent. The system is structurally engineered to ensure that wealth, once captured, achieves escape velocity. The retail application. The instinct, upon hearing this, is defeat. You assume that because you do not have a private wealth manager at Goldman Sachs, this information is purely academic. But the physics of leverage do not care about your net worth. They only care about the collateral. The exact same principles can be executed at the retail level. It just requires a shift in how you view your personal balance sheet. For the average individual, the most accessible entry point into this architecture is real estate. When you purchase a property using a conventional mortgage, you are already participating in the early stages of the system. You put down 20% of the capital, the bank provides 80%, but you retain 100% of the asset's appreciation. When the property value rises, you do not sell it and trigger taxes. You execute a cash-out refinance. You pull the newly generated equity out in the form of tax-free debt, and you use that liquidity to acquire the next asset. You are slowly building a portfolio of appreciating collateral. Even in the stock market, retail brokerages have democratized access to portfolio lines of credit. Institutions like Interactive Brokers or Charles Schwab allow retail investors to borrow against their stock holdings at relatively low margin rates, often requiring only a $100,000 account minimum to access the most favorable tiers, instead of selling index funds to cover an emergency or fund a major purchase. Triggering a capital gains tax and resetting your compounding curve, you borrow against the portfolio. The money stays invested, continuing to grow, while the tax-free loan covers your immediate capital need. The mechanics are identical, only the scale differs. The elite understand that their net worth is a balance sheet to be optimized, not a checking account to be drained. They view debt not as a desperate measure to afford consumer goods, but as a surgical instrument to extract value without triggering taxation. They view assets not as things to be bought and sold, but as permanent batteries of leverage. The machine demands your participation to function. It needs you to trade your time for wages, pay your ordinary income tax, and hold high-interest consumer debt. It requires millions of people to play by the traditional rules so that the top fraction of a percent can play by the real ones. Once you opt out of the psychological conditioning that income equals wealth, the illusion shatters. You stop working for cash, and you start accumulating collateral. But understand, what I have laid out here is merely the surface layer of a much deeper architecture. YouTube has demonetized this channel because peering too closely at the gears of the machine is not advertiser-friendly. They want you compliant, not sovereign. Click the link in the description and join me on Patreon. The raw, unfiltered, in-depth finance videos, the actual mechanics of asymmetrical wealth, live there. Do not let them keep you in the dark. Join us.